Hello, Suffolk Handicrafts. This summer, we're going to throw back to your camp days with a fun and easy project that you can take absolutely anywhere with you, wherever you end up traveling on your summer adventures. So we're going to be making these macrame friendship bracelets and or keychains in case you're a little bit old to wear friendship bracelets, but you still want to make something nice and fun. This is also a great project to get kids involved into making things. It works on their fine motor skills, as well as a little bit of their patience as well. So I welcome our crafters of any age, and let's get started. We're going to start with a supply overview. So in your kit, you will receive a little bit of cotton cord. You're going to get quite a bit of this. It won't still be on the roll, obviously. But this one we have is a 2mm thick, so you'll be able to knot it very easily, as well as your final project won't end up too thick afterwards. So you'll have quite a bit of your cotton cord, as well as some a couple of random colors of little bits of embroidery thread in case you want to add some extra decoration to your piece. And you'll also include one of the keychain hooks as well. So in case you want to make something, again, a little bit more grown up. So let's get started. So the first thing that we are going to do is prep our cord for our project. And the cord that you're going to receive in your kit is already cut into one long length. And you're going to want to measure it based on whatever project you want to start. It's helpful for you to know at the very beginning whether you want to start a keychain project or a bracelet project. They're going to be started a slightly different way, and it's helpful that you know whether you're, which one you're starting, and that way you don't have to backtrack or make any weird edits towards the end. So you're going to receive something that looks a bit like this. It's one long bit of cord, and if you're, noticing something, the ends will be taped and cut like this. That's just to prevent them from fraying, and I will show you how to do that in just a bit when we cut our other ends. So when we want to measure them to get started, we are going to start with it in its half, and then take the half and measure about 1/3 of the way down the length of the other two pieces. So it's a very long piece. So this here is now about 1/3 of the way down from the other two pieces. So our two individual ends are all the way at the end, and we're taking our half loop and ending it here. I find that this is just the cleanest and easiest way to finish this. It ends up being the easiest way with the fewest number of cuts to start your project. And this is where I'm going to show you how to start and how to do the tape cut. So you just get your normal piece of tape. Any tape will do. I just have this normal like desk Scotch tape, and you place it right here in the center and wrap it here. And it's helpful if you apply pressure all the way around. It will work even if you don't apply a ton of pressure. And then you don't need to go around that many times. So I'm actually going to cut off some of this excess. And then you can cut right in the middle of where that tape is placed, and these pieces won't fray while you're working with them. And that's the main helpful piece here. So now that we have our pieces here, we're going to be dealing with this here at the top. So to make a bracelet, you're just going to go quite near the top, about a finger's amount of loop that you're going to leave, and you're simply going to do a knot, right? Pulling through a knot just like so, and tightening all the way around, tightening all the way down, correct? If you want to start a keychain, it's also very simple. You'll take your keychain loop, and you'll take these two loops, and you'll actually just loop them and take the long ends through their loops here to get them started like that, and just pull all the way down their length. What I'm going to show you guys today is a bracelet, so I'm going to start with my loop. And knot here. And I want to pull it pretty close to the end. There. Now, it's not a bad thing if you make a bigger loop at the end. You'll just have to finish it a little bit differently. This will allow us to make a big knot at the end of our bracelet that then can slip through, and that can be how we actually fasten the bracelet onto ourselves. If you make a bigger loop, say something more like this, then you'll have to actually create ties at the end, or just leave enough of your excess cord that it just becomes a tie end. So back to getting started, you should have two very short pieces and two very long pieces. Your short pieces, when you're measuring them, they should be able to reach in a good amount of fashion around your wrist, plus a little bit of extra, because we'll need that extra for the finishing length. And again, if you're making this to give to someone, make sure that it fits them and not just you. Now, it works to tape this loop down because you're going to be wanting some tension against your two middle cords. I'm going to recommend, this is my little hack for you guys, I always just use a clipboard because I find that it holds a little bit better. It's a little bit more portable, so you can just throw this in your bag and take it with you anywhere. And you don't end up, I find that whenever I have them taped, they always just end up, I always end up pulling it too hard, it pops out of the tape. This ends up being a much better solution usually. So if you have access to a clipboard, or you can even find them at the dollar store, they're a great solution for this. And if it's on a clip, or you've made it into a keychain, you can clip it either onto the loop here, or onto any sturdy surface that you can clip onto, is another good option for if you're making the keychain version. All right, so getting started here. So we're getting started here. We have our two shorter pieces here straight down the center, and our two longer pieces separated out to the side. It doesn't really matter how they ended up pulling through in the knot up at the top, just as long as you arrange them like so when you're getting started. So we're going to show you two different 4-strand knots today, and they are very closely related. I'm going to show you the square knot and the half knot. And I'm going to show you the square knot first. Let's get a little bit closer here. So with the square knot, we are going to start on your left-hand side and create sort of a 4 here, going completely over our middle 2. And then our right hand is going to come over our sort of branch of the 4, and then underneath the middle 2, and then back up through the loop created in the 4. So this is what it will look like when you are pulling it taut. You kind of create this kind of loop in between the 2. And it is important that you pull them fairly taut pretty quickly. And to complete the square knot, you're going to start then from the other side with the 4. This time it looks more like a P. And then coming over on this side, underneath the 2 in the middle, and then through that open loop. And then pulling it taut. The biggest thing with the square knot is keeping a reminder of which side you've just started on. I don't know if everybody has trouble with remembering that, but I certainly do. And I've had to develop a very keen eye of figuring out which side I just started on, which knot I just finished, because otherwise it will affect your project, and I will show you what that looks like in just a moment. But here's how you can tell. I'm going to zoom in even closer because this is a really tricky thing. So right here where you can see where the knot is come all the way vertical and the horizontal piece is coming below that vertical bit of the cord, this indicates that we have just finished a knot that has started on the right-hand side, or on my right-hand side. So we're starting this next one on the left. So knowing that, we're able to keep going. And this is also helpful if you're traveling with it and you have thrown it in a bag and now you're restarting again and you need to decipher, okay, great, where did I stop the last time? So again, you can see as you're pulling taut, the previous start comes underneath and straight through the previous second string that we worked with is the one that comes all the way vertical and is the kind of the most prominent vertical piece that we work with here. So in this case, again, we're going to start here on the left. And then we can see, again, it comes horizontally here, and that this is the most prominent vertical, and it indicates to us that we need to come here on the right. And so I'll show you now what it looks like and how you can tell if you accidentally start two on the same side again, because you do get to see it pretty immediately in your knot. And that is helpful because you can just undo a knot or two and you don't end up changing your entire project or getting halfway down the project and realizing, oh man, one of those knots is wrong. So So here I've done 2 in a row that are from the same side, and it's a little bit subtle, but especially from the side you can see it's already starting to twist, and it's much more noticeable in person, but you notice a sort of wave starting to happen, and that's because of what it will look like when we start to do the half knot. But that's essentially what this will end up being, is the half knot will look like this. It's a full twist all the way around. It looks very much like DNA. It's a very cool knot. But that's why it starts to twist like this, is because you're essentially starting to do half knots here rather than your full square knot. So if you see that happen, and sometimes you might not catch it on the first one, but you might catch it on the second, is you can just pull and undo, and then clip it back under. All right. So that is your square knot. You basically just go back and forth, restarting and alternating from your different ends. Now I'm going to show you how to do the half knot, which is one of my favorites. I think it looks very, very cool and has a really strong impact, and in my mind is a little bit easier because you're not trying to remember which end you just started with. So again, it's the same function of the previous knot, of the square knot. It's the same exact motion. You're making your 4 or your P, and then crossing over, and then under your middle pieces. You're just never going to switch which side you start with. So if you want to start with your left, you're always going to be making those knots with your left. If you want to start with your right, you're always going to be making those knots with your right. And if you continue to do that for a string of knots, you will start to see a twisting emerge. Okay, we're starting to see it here. So it starts to twist, and you just continue with whichever side that you want to twist, and you just make knots only ever starting with the same hand, with the same side. You never change it. And that's what will give you this twist, because that's the half knot. You're only doing 1/2 of the square knot. So I want to show you how to also add some color to your piece. In this case, we're going to do some embroidery thread wrapping. It will give you this kind of look right here. And we're going to do this. You can do this in any location. In this case, I'm going to show you how to do it in the middle of your piece, so in between a couple of different sets of knots. So we're going to start here, and we're actually going to lay a little bit longer bit of thread and then loop it a little longer than we want the section of wrap to be. And trust me, we have a good reason for this. And then we're just going to start doing our wrap. I'm going to recommend that you also do at least one loop underneath your first loop, like so, and also try to not get your thread all tangled like I just did. But pull it through like that so that it can sort of keep itself taut a little bit more right at the top of your piece of wrapping. And then you're simply going to wrap it all around your piece. In this case, we are wrapping all 4 cords. And this is the way that I would recommend you do it if you want to add a little bit of color in the middle of your work. Otherwise, if you wrap, say, just the inner 2, then they will be obscured by you continuing to do by continuing to do more knots, because if you'll notice above here, we don't really see much of the interior 2 cords, so it would be a waste of your time and effort to wrap them in thread. But if you, say, wanted to add like a bead or a button to them, that's something that's going to have a little bit of weight and will actually stop your knot from happening. So that is something that you could add to your middle 2 cords without impeding your knot making. So that's another way that you can liven up your creation here. So this is our kind of as we're making progress. And you can make this as long or as short as you like. You can do this with one color or many colors. And just remember that however long you want to make your section of wrapping, make sure that your loop that you have laid out before is at the very least a little bit longer, but it can be quite a bit longer if it needs to be. We'll clean it up in a bit when we go to finish it. That when you lay out your cord at the beginning, when you lay out your embroidery thread at the beginning, it needs to have that loop. So, take a second every so often, stop and take a look, and that looks about good. So the way that we're going to finish this off is we are going to loop through the end of our wrapping cord through the loop that we had created previously. And we're going to trim it fairly close. Not terribly close, but fairly close, in a length that is shorter than the overall length of the wrapped section. So I'm going to trim it to about here. And then you're just going to pull this long end of the loop that we had created and placed up at the top. And then you're just going to pull that end and make it tuck in there. And in this case, I trimmed it a little too long, so I'm just going to trim it again. There we go. And cover it. So now you have a section that is wrapped, adding a little bit of color, and as long as you find your 2 short pieces in this case here they are, and your 2 long pieces. It doesn't really matter whether you can still identify which was on your right and which was on your left, but from before, you can just restart and restart your knots from here. So we can restart here. And I wouldn't pull super close to here just to not put as a ton of strain on the embroidery thread, but pull fairly close and it'll be all right. And in this case, I'm going to try and match a small section of the half knots and then maybe go back to the square knots. So we're going back over to this, to the left hand. So that we can create that twist effect from the half knots, so that there is kind of a little bit of symmetry around that shape. So I'm going to finish this up and then I'll show you what it looks like when I'm ready to finish up, and I'll show you how to finish up your project. I'm just about finished with my second half after the embroidery wrap, and I just want to get, now that I'm getting close to the end, I want to start checking, especially this is important for anyone who's making a bracelet, start checking it against my wrist and checking it for size. So in this case, I'm just going to check it, and since I'm making it for myself, measuring it and seeing how close the loops are to the end of the macrame. And they're fairly close. I could maybe do 1 or 2 extra knots, and we can go ahead and do those. Again, checking here to see that this is the side that we need to start on to make another square knot. And maybe 1 more, just to, you know, really be safe. And then you can pull it off, and I'll show you how to finish this off. So the easiest way that I think to make a bracelet end is to give it a good amount of room of cordage, and then make a large knot at the end with all 4 of your cords. And then this knot will be what you thread through your loop that you have made, and then that's how you'll secure it onto your bracelet. So again, this is something that you'll want to sort of do a little bit of testing, make sure that you have a good sense of your wrist size. The biggest problem you can make is making it too small, because there's not that many fixes for that. At least with making it too large, you can untie it and retie it. So what I'm doing is just making a big loop, and at this point I'm leaving it fairly loose so that when I test for size, and I want it to be fairly loose so that I'm able to, you know, notch it myself, and then that this is able to kind of loosely go around my wrist. So I'm kind of pinpointing that about here is where I want the knot to actually sit. And I might just work this knot a little bit more closely to that location. Just kind of urging it there. There we go. And then pulling it tight. And then here's where I would test whether you're able to get that knot through your loops. If you've made a loop at the top that is a little too big, you can always do another loop, do another knot here at the end, and just make an extra large knot, right? Like if you've made a knot, if you've made a loop that's extra large, just make a knot at the end that is correspondingly extra large. So I think in this case, this is going to work. So I'm going to trim these ends fairly close. And that way it'll hold. And there you go. So that's how we're going to finish off the bracelet. If you want to finish off a keychain, if that's what you've been making, the easiest way to do that is actually to make a similar knot, but finish it very close to where you are finishing your macrame knots, either your square or your half knots. And I find that the easiest and kind of most impactful way that we're finishing those is just by doing a kind of built-in tassel. So cut off your tape ends and trim all of your ends to about the same length. And what we're going to do is we're just going to unravel each of these cords and let them be free and let them be in their individual threads. So this is really helpful if you have nails or anything like that. You might find that kind of putting them under, say, a credit card and smoothing them out like that would be helpful. But just kind of combing through them to get them to unravel into their component threads. And again, after you have knotted them, you don't want to try and make a knot after you have unraveled your cords. It will be a huge headache for you. You don't want to try and do that. So that's going to be the easiest way you can do this. Again, if you want to add in extra elements of, embroidery thread, you can absolutely do that towards the end. If you want to add in any other elements, say beads, you can absolutely do beads towards the end of here. Those are going to be especially easy when you have your little bits that still have the tape on them. This will help you thread through your bead. You will want to make sure that the bead hole is large enough that your cord will fit through. The 2mm is usually okay for decent sized beads, but again, just check your beads or buttons to make sure that they will fit. The other option that you have for kind of extra personalization with these is if you have a finished piece that you want to sort of jazz up, say one that's fairly plain like this one. This is a cotton thread, so you can dye it fairly easily. It'll take fabric dye. So you can either dunk the whole thing if you want the whole thing to be a new color, or if you want to get like an ombre effect, you can dunk half of it. So you have a lot of options with how you want to personalize these, make them your own. If you want to do all of these different things to either keep for yourself, shared with others, make them with others, however you want to create this summer. So don't forget to sign up for your supply kit, pick up your supply kit, and get creative this summer. Have a good one.